next question is from Ron Kiefover.
Thank you very much, Doug. My name is Ron Kiefover. I'm president of the Kansas Sunshine Coalition for Open Government. And, you know, the coalition comes from the standpoint that people fear and mistrust the unknown. And that the strongest antiseptic for that is open sunshine and open government. I would ask each of the candidates to tell me as precisely as you can what you would do to promote transparency in Kansas government.
I would continue what I've been doing for the last 10 years. Did you know that we televise the House proceedings every day? We just limit that television to the lobby. 10 years ago, I suggested to the Speaker that we send it out to the statewide through Cox Cable so they put it on their public affairs portion of their screen. The Speaker at the time laughed and said no, even though Cox Cable said they would give us the equipment if they could broadcast it on there. I introduced a bill. Remember a couple of years ago when the governor did his budget on private cell phones? I introduced a bill that became law that prevented you from using private cell phones to do public business. Last year, before the Star Story started, I introduced legislation to change the rules that would prohibit anonymous bills. If you have an idea, you put your name on it. If you go to a committee, you put your name on it. I introduced a bill that would prevent lobbying, that would require, if you work in state government in the executive branch or the legislature, and you want to go to work for lobbyists, you've got to lay out for a year, a cooling off period. That's getting here and it has some traction. I'm going to support Senator Hensley and Senator Waggle's bill that says if your lobbying is more than just coming in the building and trying to convince me, if you're a consultant, like the governor's chief of staff was for the privatization of Lansing Prison, you got to report that also. I think those are good ideas. What we have to do is make sure transparency is not just, well, that's the issue of the day. No, that's a commitment we make day in and day out, and the governor has a heck of a bully pulpit to make sure that happens.
I tend to agree with Representative Ward. I agree with everything he said. I think he's completely honest. I think as a libertarian, the key to having a limited government, or one of the keys, is to be able to hold your representatives and your senators to the fire, making sure they're being honest and they're keeping up with their duties and what they should be doing. So I don't think I really have anything to add. I very much liked what he said.
I've always been a firm believer in transparency. When I was on the city council in Wichita, I was the vice mayor. And there were a lot of decisions that were being made and individuals casting votes just by a show of hands. And what we did is came back and I pushed and was able to get it passed where we televised how individuals are actually voting, not only televised, but then secondly, individuals had to physically vote, which left a track record allowing individuals to be able to know that day and in the future how it was. But not only was it televised, it continued to be televised in all meetings that were actually going on, that were happening within the city. So if individuals could not be there, they could see what was going on. You can't have enough transparency in allowing your bosses, your employers, the public, in knowing what's going on and what's happening. And certainly when they want additional information, we need to provide them with that information and do it in a timely manner and do it in a respectful manner. So transparency is extremely important, and you can't have enough transparency in being able to work with the public and work with the media and providing the necessary needs that they have.
Thank you for the question. I would respect the moderator's request for one answer, so it's a quick shred of documents.
That's good, Jim. There's been a lot of focus on legislative transparency. What I've seen the last 7 years, the concern that I've had has been with transparency on the executive branch side. You know, we have had so many contracts, so many things privatized, and it's all the deals have been cut behind closed doors. That needs to stop. You know, we have committed your money, taxpayer money, for 20 to 25 years in deals that may not be in the best interest of Kansans. You know, we just approved a lease purchase agreement for a new prison in Lansing. It's $362 million. That was all done behind closed doors. The legislature was fed false information, and decisions were made based on that. We're seeing the same thing going on down at Osawatomie State Hospital now. There's a contract going on to privatize that facility, which would really give the state control. And that's hundreds of millions of dollars that we're talking about turning over to a private corporation that has a history of severe violations and actually criminal acts. So I am most concerned that that's where our real problems are, and that's what we need to do to make things work better for Kansas and to be better stewards of your money.
The legislature has made a lot of progress on this issue. I don't have a whole lot to add, but if there's one thing I could add is it is opening the doors, so to speak, of the executive branch, making sure that each department is held accountable to requests for information, making sure the information is available in a streamlined process for those seeking it. And also making sure that representatives, senators, and so forth, everybody who works in the state government is able to answer questions when they're given and not just brushed off to the side. Thank you.
You know, when I served as Secretary of Agriculture, our office building was leased office space, unlike some of the other state agencies. And I can tell you, it was a nightmare compared to state-owned buildings. And so I agree with Senator Kelly. Long-term contracts, whether it's for office buildings or contractual arrangements with the state, are important. And there's been a lot that's happened behind those closed doors in the last 7 years. That's why I think it's a time for us to have a frank conversation about a state auditor. And I know that the state went through that conversation prior to me being born in the 1970s. But I think it's healthy for us to have that conversation again. We have legislative post-audit. It does a fine job, but it is ultimately governed by the legislature. And I think that there is a legitimate conversation that needs to be had as to whether or not we have an independent state auditor. And then finally, in my last few seconds, I have to throw a little love down the table. Tyler, you are doing an awesome job. I've got to say, you don't sound terribly like a Republican. I respect your right to be one, but if the Republican Party lets you get up on the debate stage with the rest of the candidates, I will be there, because that will be awesome to watch. This has been fun to be with young people and energies.
I believe one of the major issues of transparency is the connection between the people and the government. And that's why I believe I have a plan for transparency that when the legislature is not in session, I will travel across the state to talk with voters and see what they think. What do they think of what my administration, what the legislature is doing? What do they think we can do better? So they feel a connection with me and with me as a governor and their local officials, so we can work on what people in each area of the state feel like, because I believe that's the best way to fix transparency, is to get down there with the people, and I believe without that you really can't fix much of anything on that issue.
When it comes to truth and transparency, it starts with me. And this is something that I've already been on the trail from the beginning of my campaign. Josh was just mentioning the need for independent auditors. That's something I've been saying in my campaign from day one. My son is actually a tax auditor out of Overland Park. I said, we need some external auditors that do the internal audits that are necessary so we can keep truth and transparency before us. As I mentioned in my last comment, reaching out, our campaigns reached out to our local mayors and communities, and they need to see the transparency in me first. It's not just if I should become governor, all of a sudden I'm going to get transparent. My whole life has been about truth and transparency. And so I launched a broadcast, my wife and I, entitled Keep Kansas Home, because I want to get my name out there, but not just get my name out there. I want people to know who I am and who my wife is for the past 32 years, who my boys are, and that we can really keep Kansas home for those that love Kansas like myself. Thank you.
I completely agree with the idea of having a televised legislature, something like a more local C-SPAN. I think that's brilliant. What I also believe in is we should establish a separate website other than the Kansas Legislature's website that puts the bills out there. We'll scan the bills, you put them out there, it offers a summary, the bill that is introduced, depending on who introduces that bill, will write a summary of the bill, and then someone from the opposing party would write the opposition summary of that bill. So you can use those two opinions to kind of to weigh what you think. I also believe that in terms of what we should have on that same website, we should have the congressmen and the senators to give a synopsis about who they are and what they have voted for. So I just believe that putting things online and keeping up with the times, because everything's on our phone now, keeping up with the times, putting things on websites, televising, is a really good way to open up the doors for the press to get in there and see what's going on. And for citizens who are interested and who care about their state, which I hope everybody in here cares about Kansas, to get in there and form their own opinions.
I'll kind of limit to just one idea. Government isn't going to be doing the best job when it has to keep itself accountable. I believe that it'd be the duty of the governor and the state legislature to come together and maybe not a state auditor, but to create an independent organization that is responsible for putting out the ideas, bills being debated, and what is going on in government to the general public. And I believe it should be independent of the state government. And I think that's what I would do and encourage the state legislature to do, no matter who is in charge.
Obviously, transparency is one of the biggest parts of my campaign. There have been many great ideas. However, since I've started this campaign, the biggest thing I've been pushing is I came across a bill from a representative from Overland Park about the website that said, they post the forms online, and citizens can go in and say what they think in like a comment section, voice their opinions, and we can see their votes. That gets rid of the anonymous voting. That is a big problem. Yes, this is just an advancement that our state needs to take with the advancement of technology that our society is seeing.